There's an Instagram post from a few years ago that I still think about. A young man, nice watch, expensive car behind him. The caption says, "Grind never stops." The comments are full of fire emojis and people asking what he does for a living. What the comments didn't know, what his followers couldn't see, was that the car wasn't his. The watch was rented for the shoot, and he was 3 months behind on rent for the apartment he'd cropped out of the frame. He wasn't rich. He was performing richly, beautifully, convincingly, expensively, performing it. And here's what I want you to sit with before we go any further. That young man is not unusual. He's not a cautionary tale about one person's bad choices. He represents a pattern so widespread, so normalized, so deeply embedded in how people relate to money and identity right now, that most people doing it don't even recognize it as a problem. In fact, many of them genuinely believe it's a strategy. Today we're going to talk about why faking rich feels so important, and what it's actually costing the people who do it. Not to shame anyone, but because understanding this pattern is the first step to being free from it. Hi, my name is Alpha, and in this video, we're going to go through 7 reasons why faking rich feels so necessary to so many people, and what the psychology and the real numbers underneath each one actually say. Because this isn't just about money, it's about identity, it's about fear, and it's about a story most of us were handed before we were old enough to question it. Let's go. Before we get into the 7 reasons, I want to establish something that I think is genuinely important. Faking rich is not a new phenomenon. It's not a social media invention. It's not a generation problem. Human beings have been performing status since the beginning of recorded civilization, through clothing, through housing, through the food they served at dinner parties, through the horses they kept. The desire to signal belonging, success, and worthiness through visible symbols is wired into us at a level that goes far deeper than Instagram. What social media did was not create the behavior, it amplified it. It gave it an audience of thousands instead of a neighborhood of dozens, and it made the comparison constant, available every waking hour, in everyone's pocket, impossible to escape. So if you've caught yourself doing some version of this, spending money you didn't have to look away you couldn't sustain, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not weak. You are not uniquely vain or shallow, or bad with money. You are human, and the system around you was built to exploit exactly the part of your brain that makes you human. That doesn't make the consequences less real, but it changes the conversation from shame to understanding, and understanding is where change actually lives. Reason 1. Because we were taught that appearance is the proof of success. This is the root. Everything else grows from here. Most of us grew up watching the visible markers of success be treated as the measure of it. The big house meant you made it. The new car meant you were doing well. The brand name meant you had arrived somewhere worth arriving. Nobody talked about net worth at the dinner table. Nobody explained the difference between looking successful and being financially stable. Kanye West, one of the most commercially successful artists and entrepreneurs of his generation, spoke openly in interviews about his obsession with appearing wealthy even during periods when he wasn't. He described spending millions on fashion and appearances during times of genuine financial pressure because, in his words, the image was the brand, the appearance was the product. And he's not wrong that image matters in certain industries and contexts. But the line between strategic presentation and financial self-destruction is one that many people cross without ever realizing it, because they were never taught that the line existed. When appearance becomes proof, maintaining the appearance becomes survival, and survival spending is the most expensive kind there is. Reason 2. Because comparison is constant, and the bar keeps moving. There is a term in behavioral economics called relative deprivation. It describes the experience of feeling poor not because of your absolute circumstances, but because of how your circumstances compare to those around you. Studies have consistently shown that people's sense of financial well-being is tied less to their actual income and more to how that income compares to their peers. Someone earning $80,000 in a social circle where everyone earns $60,000 feels financially comfortable. The same person earning $80,000 in a social circle where everyone earns $150,000 feels behind, even though nothing about their actual financial situation changed. Social media took this phenomenon and turned it into a 24-hour experience. The comparison is no longer just your neighborhood or your workplace. It's everyone you've ever followed, everyone the algorithm decides you should see, and every aspirational image that the platform's engagement model has determined will keep you scrolling. Kylie Jenner at 21, the luxury travel influencer at 24, The entrepreneur posting about passive income from a yacht. The feed is curated for aspiration. And aspiration, left unexamined, becomes the baseline. The $200 dinner that used to feel like a treat starts to feel like the minimum. The $40,000 car that should feel like an achievement starts to feel like a starting point. When the bar moves daily, the spending moves with it, and nobody wins a race with no finish line. Reason 3. Because spending feels like belonging. This one is quieter and more honest than most people are comfortable admitting. There are social circles, at work, in communities, among friend groups, where a certain level of visible spending is the price of entry, where going to the right restaurant, wearing the right thing, driving the right car, is how belonging is demonstrated, and where not keeping up creates a subtle but real social cost. Lisa Nichols, motivational speaker and author, who has spoken publicly about her journey from food stamps to financial freedom, described a period in her early career where she was spending money she didn't have, specifically to maintain access to rooms she believed she needed to be in. The events, the outfits, the dinners. She called it buying a seat at a table she couldn't actually afford. The psychology here is not vanity, it's belonging. And belonging is one of the most fundamental human needs there is. When spending becomes the mechanism for belonging, cutting the spending feels like cutting yourself off from the people you need. That's not a financial problem, that's a human one, and it deserves to be treated as such. Reason 4. Because the debt is invisible until it isn't. Here's the thing about faking rich that makes it so financially destructive at a structural level. The damage is delayed. It doesn't show up immediately. The credit card works. The buy now pay later app approves you. The personal loan goes through. The lifestyle continues to look intact from the outside, for months, sometimes years, while the foundation underneath it quietly deteriorates. 50 Cent, the rapper who sold over 30 million records, filed for bankruptcy in 2015, with debts reported at over $32 million. In the months before the filing, his social media still showed the lifestyle. The image held, the finances didn't. And this is the cruelest part of the pattern, because the gap between how things look and how things are can widen slowly and invisibly until the moment it can't be hidden anymore. And by then, the debt isn't a speed bump, it's a wall. Most people who are faking rich are not doing it consciously. They're spending to maintain what they've established. They're paying this month's image with next month's income, and each time it works, it confirms the behavior enough to repeat it. The debt is the part you don't post, and the part you don't post is the part that eventually decides everything. Reason 5. Because we confuse the feeling of wealth with wealth itself. There is a specific emotional state that expensive things produce. The new car smell, the weight of a designer bag, the feeling of walking into a restaurant you can't quite afford, and ordering without looking at the prices. There's a confidence in it, a sense of expansion, a feeling, brief but real, of being the person you want to be. That feeling is not fake, it's neurologically real, but it is also temporary, and the gap between the feeling and the financial reality is where the damage lives. Nicolas Cage earned an estimated $150 million during his career. By 2009, he had lost almost all of it, to mansions, private islands, rare artifacts, and a lifestyle that produced the feeling of extraordinary wealth while systematically dismantling the actual thing. He told interviewers later that the spending was emotional, that it came from somewhere internal that had nothing to do with rational financial thinking. The feeling of wealth is a product, and like any product, once you pay for it, it's gone. Unlike actual wealth, it doesn't compound, it doesn't grow. It doesn't protect you when something goes wrong. Understanding the difference between the feeling of wealth and the reality of it is one of the most clarifying financial realizations a person can have, because once you see the difference clearly, the trade starts to look very different. Reason 6. Because it's a response to real financial anxiety, just the wrong one. This is the reason I want to spend the most time on, because I think it's the most misunderstood. A lot of people who are faking rich are not doing it from a place of arrogance or entitlement. They're doing it from a place of fear, anxiety about being seen as struggling, anxiety about what it means if people know the real numbers, anxiety rooted in a culture that equates financial struggle with personal failure. T.I., the rapper and entrepreneur, spoke in an interview about growing up in Bankhead, Atlanta, and the way that neighborhood shaped his relationship with money and image. He described spending extravagantly early in his career, not from a place of security, but from a place of not wanting to ever go back to feeling poor. The spending was protective. The image was armor. When financial anxiety is the root, faking rich is not irrationality. It's a coping mechanism, an attempt to manage the internal experience of financial fear through external performance of financial safety. The problem is that the coping mechanism makes the underlying condition worse. Every dollar spent on the performance is a dollar not going toward the actual financial security that would genuinely reduce the anxiety. It's running on a treadmill, exhausting, expensive, and ending exactly where you started. Reason 7. Because nobody shows you what the alternative looks like. The final reason is perhaps the most systemic and the least personal, and it matters. The images of wealth that most people are surrounded by are images of consumption, the big purchases, the visible upgrades, the experience that photographs well. What almost nobody sees, because it doesn't photograph well, because it doesn't generate engagement, because it isn't aspirational in the same visual way, is the boring, invisible process of actually building financial stability. The index fund that quietly grows for 20 years. The emergency fund that never gets touched, but changes how a person sleeps at night. The person who drives the 5-year-old car and retires early because they never upgraded. None of that makes the highlight reel. None of that generates the fire emojis. So the model most people internalize is the one that's visible. And the model that's visible is consumption, appearance, performance. The alternative exists. It's just quiet. And quiet things don't spread on platforms designed for noise. Here's the reframe I want to offer. Faking rich is not actually about money. It never was. It's about what money represents: safety, belonging, worthiness, proof that you made it, protection against the fear of being seen as less than. And when you understand that, you realize that no amount of spending actually addresses the underlying need. Because what you're trying to buy isn't a thing, it's a feeling. And feelings built on financial performance are the least stable structures imaginable. The alternative is not frugality for its own sake. It's not deprivation or minimalism as punishment. It's the recognition that real financial security, the kind that quietly accumulates over time, produces the actual version of what faking rich is trying to simulate: the peace, the options, the ability to say yes or no from a position of strength rather than performance. Real wealth doesn't need an audience, it just needs time. So what does this look like in practice? Start by getting honest about one thing, not everything, just one. Is there a spending pattern in your life that is more about how it looks than how it feels? A subscription you keep because of what it signals? A purchase you made because of where you were going, not what you needed? Name it. Without judgment, just name it. Then ask what it's actually costing. Not the price tag, but the opportunity cost. What could that same money be doing in a savings account, an emergency fund, a simple index fund, over 5 years, 10 years? The math on even small amounts over long periods has a way of reframing decisions that seemed small. Build one thing that's invisible but real: an emergency fund, an automated savings transfer, one investment account you add to monthly and don't talk about. Let something grow quietly. The feeling of that, of having something real underneath the surface, is genuinely different from the feeling that performance produces. It's steadier, it's calmer, it lasts. And be honest with yourself about the social circles and the social media feeds that are setting your baseline. You cannot manage a comparison that you're constantly exposed to. Curating your inputs is not weakness. It's financial hygiene. I want to end with the young man from the Instagram post at the beginning of this video. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he found his way out of the pattern or deeper into it. But I know that what he was doing, what so many people are doing, comes from somewhere real, from a genuine desire to be seen as someone who has made it, to feel that, to have other people feel it too. That desire is not pathetic. It's deeply, recognizably human. But the path it leads down, the debt, the performance, the exhausting maintenance of an image that doesn't match the reality, that path ends the same way every time. Not in the feeling of having made it, in the feeling of being further away than when you started. The alternative is available to you right now, not when you earn more, not when the debt is cleared, not when things settle down. Right now, with one honest conversation with yourself about what you're spending and why, with one small, invisible, real financial decision that starts building something that doesn't need an audience to be worth having. You are not what you appear to be, you are what you actually build. And building something real, quietly, consistently, without the fire emojis, is the most important financial decision most people will ever make. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. It genuinely helps more people find their way to conversations like this one, and that is exactly why we keep making them. See you in the next one.